Hey guys, Brockshot here, back with you with the next video in our series, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Without further ado, returning to The Great Gatsby. Oh, I raised him up out of nothing, right out of the gutter. I saw right away he was a fine appearing, gentlemanly young man, and when he told me he was in Oxford, I knew I could use him good. I got him to join up in the American Legion, and he used to stand high there. Right off, he did some work for a client of mine up to Albany. We were so thick like that in everything. He held up two bulbous fingers, always together. I wondered if this partnership had included the World Series transaction in 1919. Now he's dead, I said after a moment. You were his closest friend, so I know you'll want to come to his funeral this afternoon. I'd like to come. Well, come then. The hair in his nostrils quivered slightly as he shook his head. His eyes filled with tears. I can't do it. I can't get mixed up in it, he said. There's nothing to get mixed up in. It's all over now. When a man gets killed, I never like to get mixed up in it anyway. I keep out. When I was a young man, it was different. If a friend of mine died, no matter how, I stuck with them to the end. You may think that's sentimental, but I mean it to the bitter end. I saw that for some reason of his own he was determined not to come, so I stood up. Are you a college man? He inquired suddenly. For a moment I thought he was going to suggest a connection, but he only nodded and shook my hand. Let us learn to show our friendship for a man when he is alive, and not after he is dead, he suggested. After that, my own rule is to let everything alone. When I left his office, the sky had turned dark, and I got back to West Egg in a drizzle. After changing my clothes, I went next door and found Mr. Gatz walking up and down excitedly in the hall. His pride in his son and in his son's possessions was continually increasing, and now he had something to show me. Jimmy sent me this picture. He took out his wallet with trembling fingers. Look there. It was a photograph of the house, cracked in the corners and dirty with many hands. He pointed out every detail to me eagerly. Look there, and then sought admiration from my eyes. He had shown it so often that I think it was more real to him now than the house itself. Jimmy sent it to me. I think it's a very pretty picture. It shows up well. Very well. Had you seen him lately? He come out to see me 2 years ago, and bought me the house I live in now. Of course, we was broke up when he run off from home, but I see now there was a reason for it. He knew he had a big future in front of him, and ever since he made a success, he was very generous with me. He seemed reluctant to put away the picture, held it for another minute, lingeringly, before my eyes. Then he returned the wallet and pulled from his pocket a ragged old copy of a book called Hop Along Cassidy. Look here. This is a book he had when he was a boy. It just shows you. He opened it at the back cover and turned it around for me to see. On the last fly leaf was printed the word schedule and the date September 12th, 1906, and underneath, rise from bed, 6 a.m. Dumbbell exercise and wall scaling, 6:15 to 6:30 a.m. Study electricity, etc., 7:15 to 8:15 a.m. Work, 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. Baseball and sports, 4:30 to 5 p.m. Practice elocution, poise, and how to attain it, 5 to 6 p.m. Study needed inventions, 7 to 9 p.m. General resolves: no wasting time at shafters, or a name indecipherable. No more smoking or chewing. Bath every other day. Read one improving book or magazine per week. Save $5, crossed out, $3 per week. Be better to parents. I come across this book by accident, said the old man. It just shows you, don't it? It just shows you. Jimmy was bound to get ahead. He had always had some resolves like this or something. Do you notice what he's got about improving his mind? He was always great for that. He told me I ate like a hog once, and I beat him for it. He was reluctant to close the book, reading each item aloud, and then looking eagerly at me. I think he rather expected me to copy down the list for my own use. A little before 3, the Lutheran minister arrived from Flushing, and I began to look involuntarily out the windows for other cars. So did Gatsby's father. And as the time passed, and the servants came in and stood waiting in the hall, his eyes began to blink anxiously, and he spoke of the rain in a worried, uncertain way. The minister glanced several times at his watch, so I took him aside and asked him to wait for half an hour. But it wasn't any use. Nobody came. About 5 o'clock, our procession of 3 cars reached the cemetery and stopped in a thick drizzle beside the gate. First a motor hearse, horribly black and wet, then Mr. Gatz, and the minister and I in the limousine, and a little later 4 or 5 servants, and the postman from West Egg in Gatsby's station wagon, all wet to the skin. As we started through the gate into the cemetery, I heard a car stop, and then the sound of someone splashing after us over the soggy ground. I looked around. It was the man with owl-eyed glasses whom I had found marveling over Gatsby's books in the library one night 3 months before. I'd never seen him since then. I don't know how he knew about the funeral or even his name. The rain poured down his thick glasses, and he took them off and wiped them to see the protecting canvas unrolled from Gatsby's grave. I tried to think about Gatsby then for a moment, but he was already too far away, and I could only remember, without resentment, that Daisy hadn't sent a message or a flower. Dimly I heard someone murmur, "Blessed are the dead that the rain falls on." And the owl-eyed man said, "Amen to that," in a brave voice. We straggled down quickly through the rain to the cars. Owl-Eye spoke to me by the gate. "I couldn't get to the house," he remarked. "Neither could anybody else." "Go on," he started. He took off his glasses and wiped them again outside in. "The poor son of a bitch," he said. One of my most vivid memories is of coming back west from prep school and later from college at Christmas time. Those who went farther than Chicago would gather in the old Davie Union Station at 6 o'clock of a December evening with a few Chicago friends already caught up into their own holiday gaieties to bid them a hasty goodbye. I remember the fur coats of the girls returning from Miss This or That's, and the chatter of frozen breath and the hands waving overhead as we caught sight of old acquaintances and the matchings of invitations. Are you going to the Ordways? The Herseys? The Schultzes? And the long green tickets clasped tight in our gloved hands. And last, the murky yellow cars of the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad, looking cheerful at Christmas itself on the tracks beside the gate. When we pulled out into the winter night and the real snow, our snow, began to stretch out beside us and twinkle against the windows, and the dim lights of small Wisconsin stations moved by, a sharp wild breeze came suddenly into the air. We drew in deep breaths of it as we walked back from dinner to the cold vestibules, unutterably aware of our identity with this country for one strange hour before we melted indistinguishably into it. That's my Middle West, not the wheat or the prairies or the lost Swede towns, but the thrilling, returning trains of my youth, and the street lamps and sleigh bells in the frosty dark, and shadows of holly wreaths thrown by lighted windows on snow. I am a part of that, a little solemn with the feel of those long winters, a little complacent from growing up in the Caraway house in a city where dwellings are still called through decades by a family's name. I see now that this has been a story of the West, after all. Tom and Gatsby, Daisy and Jordan and I, were all Westerners, and perhaps we possessed some deficiency in common, which made us subtly unadaptable to Eastern life. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.